Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week I'm very excited because we're talking about one of my favourite topics, which is pricing your jewellery. And in particular, I'm going to be covering 10 common mistakes that jewellers make with their pricing. And this is not to make any of us feel bad, but I'm hoping that you might be able to relate to some of these. And those of you that are a bit further in your journey might think, oh, I used to do that and I don't do that anymore, which is an awesome thing to kind of affirm to yourself. If, as you're listening and you go through and you think, I'm doing all of those, don't worry. I'll, of course, offer some guidance as to what we can do instead. But it's really a way for us to talk about pricing and the common pitfalls that we might fall into. I do have a free download for you to go along with this podcast. It is a pricing spreadsheet that is available for anyone to use. It's totally free. So I'll put the link in the show notes to that. It also has a masterclass that goes along with it, which is just under an hour long. That is a full lesson in how to price your jewelry suitable for any level. So if you haven't already had access to that, do go and download that after the podcast. And if you have listened to me in that session before, but you'd like a refresher, I've refilmed it for 2025 because I've been talking about pricing for a long time. And there's a few little updates. It's a bit more polished version. And I've updated the spreadsheet download as well. So if you've got the old one, go and check out the new one too. Brilliant. So yes, just before we get into it, just a little bit of excitement that this is the first podcast, I think, that I'm recording from Brighton. I may have done another one before, but I am at Brighton, Jewellers Academy Brighton, our physical premises, which we're so excited are now open and welcoming students. If you haven't already booked a class with us, go check it out. We have tons of incredible classes available. And lots of people are traveling from all over the world to come visit. We have a couple of Americans coming this summer to do the summer intensive diploma. We have people coming from Europe. We have people coming from talking about coming from South Africa, all over. So there is no excuse. Wherever you are, plan your holiday, plan your trip. And if you are coming, do drop me a message so that I can look out for you. I'm in the studios most days. And it's just so lovely having worked from home since my son was born, and he's going to be 8 in about a week's time. So definitely 8 years, maybe a bit longer, to have a space to come in, to be creative with other people and to see other jewelers. So just wanted to share a bit of excitement about that. All right, let's get into today's topic though. 10 mistakes jewelers make with their pricing. And I feel like I could have done more, but I tried to focus on the main 10. And I only say these because I have done them too. So there is no shame, there is no blame. But hopefully, like I said, there's some things you might be able to recognize and think, what could I do to move that forward? So the first one is underestimating the price of our materials. Now, of course, when we are working through pricing our jewelry, we need to consider the cost of all the materials that we use. But that is constantly going up, so it can be tricky. And also it's thinking about the intangibles sometimes, like the postage for the materials to get to you, and the delivery charges, if there are any, and little things like the solder. If you're working in silver solder's fairly inexpensive, so it may not be such an issue. But if you're working in any type of gold, the solder is a significant cost that needs to be thought about as well. People often ask around this, how should I charge, for what they're using or for what I'm buying? So, for example, if I'm going to make a gold ring, I'll need to buy more than the actual ring, unless I'm getting it cast. Because let's say the ring is 6.5, it's like 65 millimeters. I don't want to get exactly 65 millimeters because I won't be able to shape it properly and saw it and get a really good join. So for something like that, I would charge for the length that you need to buy. So let's say you need to buy 70 mil to make sure it fits really nicely, because yes, you will have a tiny bit of scrap, but it's not much, and you have to order all of that. The same if I was buying a piece of sheet and I was using most of it, but cutting out a little shape, I would charge for the sheet. Now, it does get a little more complicated. Somebody asked the other day in a session, what if I'm doing, say, sand casting, and I'm using the gold grain, but there's a big sprue. So often with sand casting, the sprue is like the same size as the ring, for example, or the piece. In that case, I wouldn't charge for the sprue because you can easily reuse it. But you might charge a little bit. You might charge you like a casting fee. So it's using our common sense a little bit and thinking, okay, what makes sense here? What feels fair to me, but also to the customer, so that I'm not charging sort of double what they're getting on the initial fee. Obviously, we do markup later on, but that's for other reasons. But I'm also not cutting it too fine. And if in doubt, it's always worth adding a little contingency onto your materials. Again, this will depend on how expensive we're talking about, but let's say it's sort of £50 of materials. There's nothing wrong with making it 54 or 55 just to cover a little wiggle room. Because things always change and we don't want our pricing to be so tight that if we get anything wrong, we're going to lose money. Because the point of our businesses is, well, to enjoy them, to be creative, but also we do want to make money. It's important. So I would encourage you to have a think about your material costs and whether you feel like you're calculating them correctly. Particularly things like the postage are things we just don't think about. We might type into Cooksons or Rio or somewhere how much the metal is, and that's the quote that we give. But all those little extras do add up, especially over time. So make sure that you're accounting for every single bit of material that you need. Somebody also once asked if they had to buy a string of beads, for example, to do a necklace, but they didn't use the whole string. Would you charge for the whole string? And my answer is yes, if I wasn't going to very quickly use the rest again in something else. So if I'm buying something because of a customer and I can't make the piece without it, and I don't have a plan for directly using it after, then absolutely, because that is a cost of making the piece. So hopefully that makes sense. But any questions or any thoughts, come and join me over on Instagram afterwards. I'll be hanging out on there as well today to answer any questions about pricing, because I know it can be, it's a big topic. And of course, we have the Jewelers Academy Facebook group as well if you want any more support later on, if you're listening to this a bit later. But I'm generally on Instagram most days anyway. So either is fine. Brilliant. Okay, so that was number one. Underestimating the price of the materials. Number two is similar but different, which is not updating prices regularly, especially in line with price increases. So this one's a tricky one because in our industry, silver is going up quite rapidly, so is gold, and it's changing all the time. So of course, we don't want to change our prices daily. If you're doing commissions, it's worth having a limit on the quote or a little bit of flexibility, saying this is the price of gold as I've checked today. It may fluctuate a bit, but I can let you know exactly what it is when I order it. And again, I'd recommend having a little wiggle room there. So rounding it up a little bit to make sure that you are covered for tiny little fluctuations. So you don't need to go back to the customer and say, actually, it was £2 more, something little like that. But yes, I'd say at least once a year, and probably at the moment every 6 months, it's good to check in with your pricing and just go through and say, okay, are there any updates that I need to make based on not just the price of materials, that's the most urgent one, but also on your labor. And we'll come to that in a little moment. But sometimes especially if we're running a successful or busy business, we can be selling lots of things and not realizing that we're actually not making a profit anymore because our materials are starting to cost more than the profit that we've allowed in the business. So I know that it's tricky, that prices are always going up, but jewelry is a luxury item and there are always people that want to buy it. There are literally billions and billions of pounds spent every year on jewelry. So you do not need to worry that it is a market that doesn't have any space. Like there's so many people that wear jewelry, that buy jewelry. So it's more about making sure that the pricing that we have reflects the profit that we need to make to grow our businesses and to sustain them, so that we don't have to, hand it all in and stop running the business. So that's number two. We really want to be updating our prices regularly. If you're listening and you're thinking, oh, I've not updated them for a while, now might be a good time. I tend to put it into my calendar, like every January is a good time for a pricing review, or towards the beginning of the year. And then before a big push of some sort. So maybe just after the summer, before the Christmas sale season, could be another good time too. And you can think about how you're going to communicate increasing your prices as well. Sometimes you can just do it, just update it, nobody really notices, and it's just we're carrying on with life. But sometimes it can be used almost as a marketing kind of message that you're sharing with people and saying, my prices are going up on this date. If you want to get in before they go up, order now. So it can be an interesting way to talk about things. And of course, you can communicate, and there's been a lot of this on social media recently about some of the reasons for increasing prices. Sometimes it's to do with materials or labor or upskilling. So you can kind of get your customer involved in how you're running your business if you want, and share a bit about, why these things are happening. Not necessary, but it's just an option. Okay, so that was number two. Number three, so we talked about materials quite a bit. Number three is undercharging for your hourly rate. So a common mistake that jewelers make is making their hourly rate too low. Now, I know that it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string question in terms of defining what your hourly rate is as a jeweler, because you get to choose, but it should always be above minimum wage. It should always be above the living wage of where you are. So if you're living in London, there's a London living wage. If you're living in different cities, or just anywhere, everywhere has statistics usually on a living wage. So it should definitely be above that. And I would say, that kind of ballpark is probably for someone starting out. So think of it as working in any other industry. You start at the bottom, you work your way up. If you've been doing it for a while, you should definitely be increasing that. If you've invested in your training, you should definitely be increasing that. If you've got a strong demand, you should definitely be increasing that. So I think sometimes we think, we love what we do, and therefore we shouldn't charge too much for it. And that doesn't make sense to me because we love what we do. So we want to keep doing it. So we need to make sure that we're making good money from it. Otherwise, and I see this happen, more times than I would like to, there's undercharging, or perhaps there's under marketing. The business in the end isn't profitable, and therefore people kind of throw in the towel in one way or another and get another job, which perhaps is less in line with their passion and what they want to do. I don't want that for anybody. And I know that there can be times when we need to adapt and adjust and be flexible, but I don't believe that there is anybody who just can't make a living from jewelry. It is possible for all of us. It's just finding your unique way, and cutting your prices is not going to be the way. Because yes, you could get more sales, maybe not, but maybe, but the business is still not profitable. So you could be super busy selling loads of stuff. And it's almost like a vanity metric, because you could sell hundreds of pieces every year and still make zero profit, which is not what we want. And it's quite demotivating as well. So yeah, you should absolutely get paid well for what you do, 100%. So that's number three. Number four, this mistake, which I think it's a tricky one, because we see other people online and it's so easy to do, but it's comparing ourselves to others, looking at their jewelry, thinking that it's the same or even better or whatever, and seeing that they have a lower price point. So there are people out there, of course, there's lots of people undercutting for various reasons. Now, it's not sustainable to do that. So it's not something that I worry about too much, because those businesses tend to come and go, and they don't grow because they don't have a sustainable pricing plan. But when you are someone who has a sustainable pricing plan, it can be tricky to think, oh my goodness, they're selling that for this amount and mine is double or triple, or however much more. How on earth am I going to get customers? But this kind of leads on to one of the next points, which is that your pricing is not how you get customers. We get customers through building a connection with people, through our marketing, through our branding, and through creating a product that other people want. It is not through pricing. If we are relying on low prices to have a successful business, it's not going to go well for us. So I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But this one is about comparison. So comparing ourselves to other jewelers. And often they are, at the beginning of their journey and they're not confident with their pricing. Often they're not other handmade jewelers. That's another thing that we can be guilty of, is comparing ourselves to non-handmade jewelers, which there should be. If you're making your pieces from scratch, they should cost more. And you're adding value in terms of the fact that it's handmade. So if you're comparing yourself to something that is made with a machine or production, you're always going to fall short. So we want to move away from that comparison mindset and say, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. It doesn't matter what they're charging. We have built this product. We believe in it. We're going to price it correctly. And then we're going to work on our business and make sure that we are aligned in all those different areas. I would say that you do have to be careful to make sure that you're relevant in the marketplace. But having worked with thousands of jewelers on their businesses, I've never met someone who's overcharged. So I'm not even going to go down that route. It's always undercharging. So please don't compare yourself to others. Just wish them well, send them a little good vibes, and focus on yourself and doing the thing that you know is right for you and your business. It's also much better to have less customers paying you more money for pieces than to have loads of customers paying you not enough for pieces. Because in model A, you're less busy, you've got more time for customer service, designing pieces, running the business, and the profitability is higher. In model B, you're busy, you're usually tired, overwhelmed, and you're not making money. So it's easy to see kind of the route that we want to focus on, if any. Awesome. Okay, so we've had one which was underestimating the price of materials. The second was not updating our prices regularly in line with changes in material increases and things. The third was undercharging for our hourly rate. And the fourth was comparing ourselves to others. So the fifth, which I touched on, is lowering prices to increase sales. So sales are not dependent on price. And if we could all believe that, I feel like half of our issues or more with pricing would be gone. Because what we do is we link pricing and sales, and we think people would buy my jewelry if it was cheaper. But my question to you is, how many people are looking at your jewelry and almost buying it and then just saying, if only it was cheaper? And I think the answer is very few. Usually, if we're not getting sales, it's because we don't have a big audience or we're not attracting the right people. Perhaps we've not been around long enough and we haven't built the trust that we need to. Sometimes it can be to do with product. So if you want more sales and you're not getting the sales that you want in your business, you want to look at your marketing first, because that's the key to selling, is getting the word out there and telling people what you have and getting it in front of as many relevant eyeballs as possible. And the second thing you might need to look at is your product, your jewelry. And is it clear, concise? Do you have a strong signature style? Do I feel confident buying from you? And all of the things around marketing and product. Pricing is not the reason why we buy something. In some cases, it can be that you really want something. You've seen it, it's the desire is there, you're ready to go for it, and it's just the price holding you back. But that's very rare. Usually people say it's the price and they may even think it's the price. But the reality is, most of the time, if you really want something and it's really aligned with you, you'll find a way. It's about priorities. Of course, there are some people in the world that it's never going to be an option to buy handmade jewelry. And that's a different segment. So we're not focusing on that in our businesses. We're focusing on people who want handmade jewelry, are looking to buy it, and they are not a price sensitive bunch. Of course, they don't want to feel like they're being extorted in any way. So if it feels really unreasonable, that is perhaps a different matter. But generally speaking, I think we can do ourselves a disservice as jewelers thinking, maybe we think, well, I wouldn't pay this, so therefore nobody would. But everyone has a different lifestyle. Everyone has different levels of income. Everyone has different backgrounds, different support levels. And whatever we may think of that, there are people buying handmade jewelry every single day at a good price point for both them and for the jeweler. So there's no reason why you can't be part of that. And I know that a lot of you already are, which is awesome. And I hope as we go through, you're also thinking, I don't do that. Yeah, I don't do that one. I do that one, and I don't do that one. So we're starting to kind of have that self-awareness as well around our pricing and around our business. But yeah, the succinct version of that is if you're not getting sales, market more, don't lower your prices. Number 6 is not accounting for all of the extras that come up when we're making and selling jewelry. So by extras, I mean things like hallmarking. And in terms of hallmarking, it's not just the price of the hallmark, it's sending your package to the hallmark, to the assay office where the hallmark is made. This is mostly for UK, but there's lots of random extras in different places too. And the postage back, so that whole situation. If you're doing anything like plating your jewelry, or if you're outsourcing any elements such as stone setting and stuff, making sure all of that's well accounted for. But also things like postage, and making sure that it's clear who's paying for that. Is it on top of the price, or is it included in the price? I tend to put postage on top of the price for lower ticket items, sort of, well, less than a few £100s. And I'll tend to embed postage in the price for higher end items. But it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as it's clear and you know that you've accounted for it in your pricing strategy. And packaging as well. Is there packaging included in the price? Is it additional? And generally, if the packaging is needed, if it's necessary to send it in, then I would include it in the price. And if it's optional, like they can choose to have a special wooden box or something, then I would make that additional. And again, I might change that if it was a commission or a bespoke piece. I might include the packaging for free because I've got higher profit margins built in there. So all of these things to think about. And I know it can be a little overwhelming if you're new. But it's so great that you're learning this stuff so early on in your journey, because it will save you so much time, heartache, and money. So well done for taking the time to learn these things. Brilliant. Okay, so we talked about lowering our prices to attract sales is a definite no. Not accounting for the extras. We're not going to do that anymore. Number 7 is over discounting to attract sales. So this is slightly different to low prices to attract sales. So we're talking about the use of discounting. Now, I'm not against discounting per se in handmade jewelry, but I do think that it should be used infrequently and at low amounts. So if I see a jeweler that's discounting at 30%, at 50% on a regular basis, what that makes me think is, oh, they've overcharged in the first place. Now, I know that sample sales and things like that can be different, and sometimes you can communicate a clear message that I am not making these pieces anymore. This is the end of the line, and therefore I'm doing this special offer. But as a general part of your strategy, discounting shouldn't be the main way, I don't think. And if you are going to use discounting, I'd say use it up to 2 times a year, so roughly every 6 months. And I would be looking at something like 10%. So that it is substantial, that I feel like, oh, if I'm buying something that's, say, £200, I'm going to get £20 off. That's substantial. But it's not so much that I feel like, I feel like, oh, why was it that much in the first place then? So we don't want to devalue our brand with our discounting, but it's okay to use infrequently, little, and far between if it feels appropriate. Some jewelers don't like to discount at all, and I totally get that. I'm also not against that. So it's just figuring out what's right for you. I would rather, as a jeweler, do a giveaway for free to attract people to the mailing list who are interested in my jewelry, and use that as a marketing spend than do discounting across the whole range most of the time. But it's good to mix it up and explore and experiment with your audience, because you never know. And these are generalizations. So you may have a business where you think, actually, this is really working for me. And if something's working for you and it's genuinely helping your business to grow, do that. Don't listen to me. Do the thing that's working, because that's the most important thing, is the results that you're getting in terms of your business. But these are generally things that come up, and that can be tricky. And don't feel bad if you've not thought about these things, or you didn't know them, or you've done the opposite, because where do we learn this? Like, it's not general knowledge how to price jewelry and how to navigate finances in a jewelry business. It's very complex. And as creatives, generally speaking, selling and pricing in those kind of areas are not our natural sort of zones of genius, if you like. They're things that we can learn, and some of us are really great at them for various different reasons, perhaps different backgrounds, different trainings, different messages from parents and family and things like that. But don't beat yourself up if this isn't natural to you. But this is a learned skill. How to price your jewelry is a learned skill. So wherever you're at with it, you can progress and kind of move forward and make positive changes. Brilliant. Okay, so over discounting to attract sales devalues the brand, a mistake that we can make. Number 8, I've kind of just touched on, but is blaming ourselves for not getting the pricing right straight away. Now, first of all, there's no such thing as right. Pricing is something that is developing over time. Sometimes we feel like we're in a good place with it. Sometimes we might feel uncomfortable, and it's constantly changing and fluctuating. So listen to yourself around your pricing. If you sell something and you don't feel good about it, that is often a sign that the pricing isn't quite right. Perhaps you've underpriced it and you feel a bit like, oh, I wish I'd have charged more for that. And most jewelers at some point in their journey will have that feeling. And I always think that's such a great thing to notice, because then we can say, okay, now is the time I need to increase my prices. It's not feeling right anymore. I'm feeling undervalued, and it is directly linked to our self-esteem and how good we feel about ourselves. If we are our own bosses and we are not paying ourselves enough, there's going to be some inner resentment about that. Why have I spent 10 hours on this and got £100 for it? That's not okay. So it's an art, not a science, as we always say, and it's a journey to get there. And I don't think you ever really get there, but you can feel comfortable with your pricing, and you can put in steps each year to update it, do a refresh, and feel in a good place with it, which is all that we really want to do. Keep it simple, regular updates, go with your guts, and face the fear of that you might feel when you're tempted to underprice things. So it's a process. Number 9, using the same formulas for wholesaling, for selling direct to the customer, and for fine jewelry. So for me, these are 3 different formulas, and they're also 3 different types of business model. You can integrate them all into one business, but they need to be thought about almost as separate projects. So generally speaking, I would not recommend having one product or collection and selling it through your website, selling it through wholesale, and also, well, if it's fine jewelry, it either is or it isn't. So you can't really do that anyway. It's not a problem. But I recommend thinking about wholesale a little bit differently. Wholesaling is when you're selling your jewelry through a shop or a gallery or a third party, and they are doing the job of selling your work. So you are selling your jewelry to them. So they are your customer. But what that means is there needs to be enough profit margin in the piece that they can make a profit and you can make a profit, which is different to when you're selling direct to the customer, because the only person that needs to make profit is you. So I often recommend that jewelers have a version of a collection or elements of a collection that work through wholesale, and to focus on having a good pricing strategy around that. But then if you're selling direct to the customer, there's some other pieces you could make. You could make pieces that are perhaps more time intensive, because you don't need such higher profit margins there. This is all explained in detail in the masterclass that you guys have the link to. And then in terms of fine jewelry, we do have a look at different ways to price fine jewelry. For example, if you're working with gemstones and diamonds that might cost £500, £1,000, and we're generally working with a markup of say 2.5 on our silver pieces, we wouldn't usually use the same markup on the diamond, because if your diamond costs £1,000 and you've got a 2.5 markup, you're charging 2,500 for a 1,000 diamond, which doesn't really sit well with the market rate. I mean, if you've got a brand that can carry that pricing, then awesome. I'm all for going for it. But generally speaking, that markup is too high. So we might reduce the markup on the diamond to 1.5, something like that. So we're charging 1,500, but then do the rest of the pricing using our normal formula. This is where it gets more complicated. So I definitely recommend checking out the class, because I have a spreadsheet in front of me and there's numbers and I can guide you through it. And I think when you can see the numbers on the screen, it makes more sense. But essentially, what this point is that we don't want the exact same formula for all of our different types of jewelry if we're working in these different areas. There are some tweaks that we make for different types of pricing, which helps us to be competitive, but also keeping profit in mind, and keeping sustainability in mind for our businesses too. Which brings us on to number 10, which is knowing all of this, knowing everything that we've said, but feeling underconfident. And so keeping our prices low anyway, to avoid facing those feelings of fear that can come up, and just doing it anyway. So I think I've definitely been this person, and I've seen lots of people in this position where they're like, I know all the things I should do. I've done the class, I've seen the spreadsheet, but I just can't. People say, I just can't. And what that means is I don't have the confidence in my ability to charge that much. And that is something to work on. It can't always be done overnight, but I have the confidence in your ability, because everybody is able to charge well for the work that they do, whatever industry they're in, whatever they're doing. Your time and your skills and your expertise are worth charging for. So I think that develops. Things that have helped me with that are doing training, because I feel like I've invested in the training. So I definitely, when the imposter syndrome comes in, I'm like, no, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I definitely do know what I'm doing. So sometimes those external markers can be helpful. Also reminding myself that everybody in any job anywhere in the world is worthy and should be paid well for their time, because that's how we live and that's the kind of society that we want. It's not always available, but we should be contributing towards what we want in the world. And in terms of the fear and the feelings that might come up when you do increase the prices and you feel like, oh my goodness, this is going to be okay. I think there's something about trusting the process. And it's okay if some people drop off, because perhaps they weren't your ideal customer anyway. If they're only there for the bargains, for the discounts, if you're someone who's been doing that kind of marketing so far, then maybe it's okay to let them go as you grow and find more genuine customers who just want what you have to offer and are not overly price sensitive about it. So lots of things in there. I'm going to do a very quick recap, because we covered quite a lot and it's quite dense. So the first mistake that a lot of us make are underestimating the pricing and of the materials, so how much they're going to cost us. The second one is not updating our prices regularly, in line with price increases, and also in line with our hourly rate increase, which should be increasing over time. The third one is undercharging for our hourly rate, and believing this, I love what I do and therefore maybe I don't need to be paid well for it. Total nonsense. We're going to throw that one out. I love what I do, which is why I need to be paid well for it, because I want to keep doing it. Number 4, comparing ourselves to others, and lowering our prices based on perceived demand. Someone else is charging less, therefore I need to lower my prices. And reminding ourselves that in a race to the bottom, nobody is winning. So we don't want to get involved in the race to the bottom. Number 5 is lowering our prices to attract sales, and we need to remind ourselves that sales do not come from low prices. They come from connection with customers, marketing, having a great product, and building a business, which takes time. Sometimes it's easy to think if my prices were different, everything would be solved. But the truth is that building a business, a profitable business, takes years. And so we just need to have the patience, put the regular work in, and know that it is coming. Number 6, not accounting for all the extras such as hallmarking, postage, packaging, just forgetting about those, and that can really eat into profit margins. Number 7 is over discounting to attract sales. We want to use our discounts, very, very small and infrequent so that they are powerful if and when we are going to use them. Number 8 is blaming ourselves for not getting it right straight away and not remembering that pricing is a process that's going to take a little bit of time. Number 9 is using the same formulas for wholesaling, for selling direct to the customer, and for fine jewelry, instead of segmenting those bits of our business out and making sure we're pricing with that business model in mind. And finally, number 10 is knowing all of this, but feeling underconfident, and so just not taking the action to make these changes. So I would encourage you, if you're listening today and you think, actually, there's some of those that I could have a look at, have a go, schedule it in, make some tweaks. It doesn't have to be a big change, it can be small little changes. But my main wish for you is that your business is not only attracting sales, but that it's profitable. And it's better to have a business that doesn't have sales yet, but the pricing is in the right place, because then we just focus on the marketing to bring in the sales, than to have a business that has sales and the pricing is in the wrong place, because you're not making any money and you're just working really hard, which is not going to make you feel good in the long run. So I hope it's been helpful listening today. I always love sharing thoughts on this topic with you guys. Do come and join in the discussion over on Instagram at Jewelers Academy. We'll be talking about this today as well. And if you have any questions, you can get in touch anytime. And finally, I just wanted to mention that we have this incredible offer at the moment on a Jewellery Business Starter Kit. So if you're starting a jewelry business, or perhaps you're at the stage where you're thinking about starting, or it's been on your radar for a while, but you just need that kind of push to get you going, it's a kit which you can download today and get started with straight away. And it contains 4 programs inside it, online programs, so you can take it from anywhere in the world. The first one is 20 days to start a jewelry business, which guides you through what to do each day for 20 days to just get up and running. So it really helps cut through the procrastination and the fear and all those things, and just be like, right, today we're choosing a name. Tomorrow we're going to look at colors. So we just kind of do a little bit at a time. After that, we move on to smartphone photography. So learning to take some lovely pictures of any jewelry that you've made using a smartphone, which I think probably everyone has access to, and very little or no kind of equipment, and just how we can get some really beautiful imagery and videos to start doing the marketing, which is such an important part of our business. It then has the masterclass on pricing, which we've been talking about, and finally it has a new course which is called How to Market Your Jewelry Business in Your First Year. And it focuses on going from 0 on everything, 0 followers, 0 email subscribers, 0 anything, to what do you need to do in the first 12 months to get everything up and running. So that costs just under £500, but anyone joining us for a diploma this year, if you sign up before the 31st of March, you'll get access to this course for free. And we really made it for our diploma students so that between now and September, when they're starting the course, they can build the business, so that when you go into the course in September, you already have a business and you're just learning how to make stuff for it. But anyone is welcome to join the starter kit. So I'll make sure we put a link in the show notes to that, and also to the diplomas, because this is a great kind of opportunity. If you're thinking about join before the 31st of March, because you will get this for free, and it is a really great value course. Brilliant. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Love to hear your thoughts on pricing as well, because there is always more to learn. But the most important thing to remember is that you are incredibly worthy. And whether you're at the beginning stage of your journey or much further down the line, your skills are valuable and the work that you do matters. So make sure that you do what you can to honor that in your pricing and in how you run your business. And I look forward to seeing you back here for another episode very soon. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.